This is TradeFlow News, bringing you relevant news and insights from around the world. TradeFlow News, enabling trade for SMEs and economies worldwide.
These are some of the key topics that we will be looking into in today's program.
First, let's take a look at the overnight headlines which are impacting the commodity markets.
OPEC's oil output rose further in October after an OPEC Plus agreement to raise production, a Reuters survey found on Tuesday, though the scale of the increase slowed sharply from September and the summer months. The OPEC pumped 28.43 million barrels per day, BPD, last month, up 30,000 barrels of oil per day from September's total, the survey showed, with Saudi Arabia and Iraq making the largest increases. OPEC Plus slowed the pace of its output increases for October on growing concern over a possible supply glut. Simultaneously, some members are tasked with extra cuts to compensate for earlier overproduction, limiting the impact of increases.
Oil prices edged higher on Wednesday as investors digested U.S. inventory data pointing to firmer fuel demand, while weaker economic data from top oil importers weighed on prices. Brent crude futures rose by 45 cents, or 0.7%, to $64.89 a barrel by 10:41 GMT, having touched a near two-week low in the prior session. U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude was up 46 cents, or 0.76%, at $61.02. Oil probably found support from U.S. data that was not as bad as feared thanks to large product inventory declines, suggesting demand was holding up, UBS analyst Giovanni Stornovo said.
Moving on to the top news in the energy sector.
India's planned rules requiring renewable producers to strictly adhere to their promised green energy supply to the grid would squeeze company earnings and slow investment in the sector, a review of industry letters showed on Wednesday. The Central Electricity Regulatory Commission, in its draft published in September 2025, proposed tighter regulations for wind and solar power producers under the deviation settlement mechanism. The new framework aims to gradually narrow the permissible gap between the amount of electricity producers commit to supply and what they actually generate.
U.S. crude stocks rose last week while gasoline and distillate inventories fell, market sources said, citing American Petroleum Institute figures on Tuesday. Crude stocks rose by 6.52 million barrels in the week ended October 31st, the sources said on condition of anonymity. Gasoline inventories fell by 5.65 million barrels, while distillate inventories fell by 2.46 million barrels from a week earlier, the sources said. Next, we have the top news in metal markets. Gold prices gained more than 1% on Wednesday, with a slight U.S. dollar pullback and wider risk-off sentiment driving demand. Spot gold was up 0.8% at $3,966.54 per ounce by 10:44 GMT. U.S. gold futures for December delivery rose 0.4% to $3,976.10 per ounce. Gold prices have gained about 52% this year, reaching an all-time peak of $4,381.21 on October 20th. The recent shift to more of a risk-off mood in financial markets due to growing concerns about equity market valuations is helping gold stabilize following its retreat from record levels, said Julius Baer analyst Karsten Menk.
Shanghai copper fell to a more than 1 week low on Wednesday, easing for a fourth straight session, as a downward revision to Codelco's 2025 output target still signaled yearly growth. Sluggish Chinese demand and a firm dollar also pressured the market. The most active copper contract on the Shanghai Futures Exchange closed daytime trade 0.88% lower at 85,670 yuan, $12,027.24 per metric ton. Earlier in the session, Shanghai copper declined to 84,900 yuan a ton, lowest since October 22 when it touched 84,500 yuan a ton.
We will now look at the top news in the agricultural sector.
European Union soft wheat exports so far this season, as reported by the European Commission, jumped by almost 1.8 million metric tons last week as the figures incorporated a chunk of missing data for top EU wheat producer France. The Commission's tally for EU soft wheat exports since the start of the 2025-26 season in July was 8.03 million tons as of November 2, compared with 6.25 million the previous week. That was 4% below the year-earlier level, compared with a 21% lag a week ago, the official data released on Tuesday showed.
That is all for today's news on commodity markets. Stay tuned to TradeFlow News as we continue to provide you with more updates. We also invite you to follow us on Twitter at TradeFlow News, which allows you to watch our program on your mobile device or desktop to receive information from there.